Can you please state your name and spell your first and last name for the court reporter?
Jane Roy, Janeroy.
Okay, and you don't have to tell us exactly where you live, but what city do you live in?
Lutz.
All right. Back on January 13th of 2014, were you living in the same location?
Yes.
Are you currently employed?
No, I'm retired.
Okay, and what are you retired from?
I was a bookkeeper
All right, how long were you a bookkeeper for?
from 1979 to 2000.
Okay, so about over 20 years.
Yes.
All right. Back on January 13th of 2014, did you decide to go to the movies?
Yes, we did.
And who were you going to go to the movies with?
My husband.
Now, looking at you, and I don't think members of the jury can see that side of your face, but let's talk about, for lack of a better word, a disability. Do you have any disabilities with respect to hearing in your left ear?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what is that?
I had a brain tumor. It was called an acoustic neuroma, and it left me paralyzed on the left side of my face. I couldn't close my eye, and I was deaf in my left ear.
Okay, and because of the issue with your eye, did you have any procedure done?
Yes, I had to have a tarsography because the fact that I couldn't close the lid was damaging the retina, and my eye was drying up, and there was a lot of pain involved, so they closed the eye to keep it moist.
Okay, and to help out the court reporter, did you write down exactly how to spell that particular procedure? Or give it to me?
I will try.
No, I have it. I have it written down. So for the
Okay.
court reporter, it's TARSORRHAPHY. All right, so let's talk about January 13th of 2014. You and your husband decided to go to a movie?
Yes.
And what movie theater was that?
Theater 10, I believe it was at the Groves in
Okay.
Wesley Chapel.
Okay, the Grove Theater in Wesley Chapel. You think it
Yes.
was in theater number 10?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, do you know what movie it was?
Yes, The Lone Survivor.
Okay. Do you remember about what time it was starting?
It was an early afternoon matinee.
Okay, sometime after 1 maybe?
Yes,
All right. You all purchased tickets there?
yes, outside.
Did you go to the concession stand?
No,
You went directly into theater number 10?
we did.
When you go to the movies, do you all sit in a particular spot when you go to the movies?
Yes,
Okay, and tell the members of the jury where it is that you and your husband like to sit.
we like to sit in the last row in the center of the theater.
All right. When you walked into the theater, do you remember if there were any advertisements or previews playing?
Yes, the previews were on.
All right, so let's talk about that. When you walk into the theater, do you turn around to look at the theater to see where you're going to sit?
Yes, but we already know that we're going to go up there.
Okay, but you had to turn around and you're looking at the theater and you're going to go up to the back row.
Yes.
Correct? All right. When you first get into this theater, what are the lighting conditions like?
The lights have been muted because the show has not started yet.
Okay, so you're using the term muted. Let's describe that a little bit more. Could you see the seats when you turned around to look at the theater?
Yes.
All right. So it wasn't dark like when the movie starts.
No.
All right. Could you see people sitting in those seats?
Yes.
Could you see the steps?
Yes.
So eventually you made your way up to the back row, correct?
Yes.
Any difficulty at all seeing your way from the bottom all the way up to where you're going to sit?
No.
You didn't need a flashlight or to use a phone
Oh,
or anything
no.
like that? Okay. So although it was muted, you're saying that you could see clearly in the theater?
Yes.
All right. With respect to the volume, when you sat down in your seats, okay? Well, let's talk about where you sat. You said you like to sit in the back row, and then where?
In the center.
All right. Were you able to sit in the center on this particular day?
No, there was already a couple sitting there.
All right. So let's just fast forward for a second. This couple that you're talking about, was that individual involved in the shooting that we're going to be discussing?
Yes.
All right. Did you later learn the name of that person or that couple?
Yes, I found out that their name, it was Curtis Reeves. I don't know his wife's name.
Okay. But you didn't know them at the time of the shooting?
I knew nobody in the theater.
Okay. And eventually we're going to talk about someone that was shot. Did you come to learn that person's name later on?
Yes, that
Okay.
was Chad Olson.
Okay. All right. But again, you didn't know him either.
I knew nobody.
All right. So when we're talking about the names, it's just because after the shooting you learned the names of those individuals?
Yes.
All right. So you indicated that the Reeves were sitting in the seats that you wanted to sit in. Was that correct?
Yes.
All right. So where in relation to the Reeveses did you end up sitting?
Well, it was Mr. Reeves, his wife, an empty seat. Then it was myself and then my husband.
Okay. And the left side was then facing the Reeves, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and that, we already talked about, that was the side that you have a little bit of difficulty.
Yes.
All right. So when you sat down in the seats, you indicated the previews were on. How would you describe the volume in the theater at that time?
Loud, but not loud like when the movie is on.
Okay, so let's talk about that. When you say loud, did you have any difficulty in hearing your husband?
No, no, we were able to converse.
Okay, even though the previews were on?
Yes.
Didn't have to speak any louder than the previews?
No.
Okay. Could you hear other conversations? And by that I mean this. Could you hear like the mumbling of voices?
Yes.
All right, even though there were previews, you could hear that?
Yes.
All right. Were you specifically listening to anyone else's conversation?
No.
All right, so you couldn't hear the words, but at the same time you weren't paying attention to other people?
Exactly.
All right, but you could hear that there are other people in the theater?
Yes.
All right, and still see them?
Yes.
Did there come a point in time when your attention was focused to your left?
Yes.
Okay, what was one of the first things that happened that caused you to start looking to your left?
Well, they started talking about the turning the cell phone off.
Okay, that's like during the previews?
Yes. And I noticed some commotion to my left, so I turned to directly look at them, and Mr. Reeves was leaned over speaking to Chad Olson, and I could see a light, so I figured that he had a phone and he was on his phone.
Okay, when you say he was on his phone, who are you referring to?
Chad Olson,
Okay,
sorry.
Could you see from where you were on which side of Chad Olson's body that light was from? Do you know if he was holding it in his right hand or left hand at the time, or you just saw a light?
I saw a light.
Okay. And how much time do you think had passed between the time that the message went on in the preview about the cell phones and you saw the defendant reach or lean over to talk to Chad Olson?
Almost as soon as they started talking, I saw Mr. Reeves lean over to talk to Mr. Olson.
Okay.
It was almost immediate.
Almost immediately after the message was played
It
about
was
the
on
cell
the
phone.
screen, yes.
Okay. So it's not like 3 or 4 minutes went by. It was
Oh,
immediate.
no, no.
After you saw the defendant lean over to Mr. Olson and have that conversation, what's the next thing that you saw?
Mr. Reeves stood up, and he turned to it would have been his left, and he started walking through the aisle of the theater to go down.
Okay. Were you on the right of Mr. Reeves?
I was on the right of Mr. Reeves, yes.
Okay, because I might have to orientate you a little bit. Did Mr. Reeves walk by you to get out of the row?
Yes, he did. He turned to go out the row. He was walking quickly. He was mumbling. He seemed to be upset or irate about something, and he went down the row and down the stairs.
Okay, so when you said that he went to his left, did you mean that he went to his right to pass by you?
Oh, yes, that's right, too. It would have been his right, yes, yes.
Okay, so you indicated that as he's passing by you, you're watching him.
Yes.
All right, and you also hear him?
Well, I couldn't understand what he was saying, but he was mumbling.
Okay. Did it appear to you that he was having a conversation with his wife?
Oh, absolutely not.
All right, and why are you saying that?
Well, he had been past her. I mean, there was an empty seat and her on my left, and by that time he was in front of me. He wasn't turned back towards his wife like he would have been talking to her, and he was mumbling in front of me, and he was mumbling as he went by, so
Okay.
wouldn't have made sense.
And did you watch him as he exited out your row?
Well, I saw him walk by and get into the stairway.
Okay. And did you watch him go out, or you just
I
started
saw
paying
him go
attention?
down the stairs.
Okay. Did you see him having any difficulty when he was leaving the aisle or going down the rows, anything like that?
Not at all.
All right. Did he have a cane or anything that was helping him walk?
No.
How would you describe Mr. Reeves? Small, medium? How would you describe
Oh, no,
him?
he was a large man.
When he walked by, did he say anything to you?
No,
Ever say excuse me or anything like that?
no,
Now, prior to seeing the defendant get up and leave, did you see any type of threatening behavior between anybody before
No.
he got up to leave?
no,
All right. Did you see Chad Olson get up to climb over the row?
no,
See Chad Olson threatening
no.
Mr. Reeves? Okay. At that point, it just seemed like there was a discussion about the cell phone, and then Mr. Reeves left.
Yes,
Do you know approximately how long? I know you weren't timing it, there was no reason to, but do you know about how long it was that the defendant had left the theater?
3 to 5 minutes.
Did you notice when he came back into the theater?
Yes,
Okay, and where, just approximately, was it that you first saw him coming back into the theater?
I guess when he was probably halfway up the stairway, I would see his head, and then I noticed that he was coming back up.
Okay. Did he have to walk by you again, obviously?
Yes.
All right. Did he have any difficulty walking up the stairs, walking through the row to get to the middle?
No, at that point I had pulled my legs up because I was afraid that he was going to bump me again, but no, he just walked right by and he sat down.
Okay, and by bumping you, you don't mean he intentionally bumped you?
Oh, no,
Okay,
no.
just when someone exits a row, that's just what happens in a movie
Yes.
theater. Okay. Do you see Mr. Reeves sit down, or do you just see him go back to the area that he was sitting?
As far as I remember, he came into the row and he sat down. He went next to his wife and he sat down.
Okay, so let's talk about what happens a few moments after that. Do you then get your attention directed to the left again at some point?
Yes, I could see that there was something going on, so I turned to look, and Mr. Olson had stood up, and he looked at Mr. Reeves and he said, "You went and reported me."
Okay. Now, when you say that Mr. Olson had stood up, is he in his row?
Yes. No, he never left his row. He just stood in front of his seat, and he looked at Mr. Reeves and he said, "You went and reported me," or something to that effect.
Okay, and then what happened next?
Well, the first thing I knew, popcorn went flying, and almost immediately I saw Mr. Reeves' hand come up, and I saw a flash of red, and I thought, what the heck? There was a loud noise, it smelled, and then I thought, oh my God, he shot him. And then I saw Chad Olson turn around. He was facing Mr. Reeves, so he would have turned to his left to go out the row, like he was going to exit the row, but then he fell right in front of me.
Okay. When you heard that noise, was it a loud noise?
Yes.
Okay. Were you shocked?
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about this just a little bit more. When Mr. Olson stood up, did you see him attempt to climb over into what would basically be your row?
Never.
Okay. Did he start threatening to beat up or kill or anything like that?
No.
Did you ever see him throw an object? And by him, I mean, did you see Chad Olson throw any objects at the defendant?
Absolutely not.
Did you hear the defendant say anything, and it's going to sound kind of silly, but exclaim like, "Oh my God," or "I'm hit," or "I'm hurt," anything like that?
Never.
Did you ever hear the defendant yelling at all?
No.
Did you ever see the defendant putting his arm out and yelling, "No, no, no," or "Whoa, whoa, whoa," as if someone was attacking him?
Never. Never.
Did you ever see a female with Chad Olson?
No. I was so concerned that Mr. Olson and Mr. Reeves were going to have a physical altercation. And I thought that Mr. Reeves was going to stand up as quickly as he did when he left to go out of the theater, and he was going to punch Mr. Olson in the nose or something like that. I never expected a shot. I thought it was going to be a physical thing.
Okay, so you thought the defendant was going to attack Chad Olson physically?
Yes, yeah, he was the one that appeared to me to be mad.
Okay, not Mr. Olson.
No.
At any point in time, did you see Chad Olson physically attack this defendant?
Never.
And we talked about ever hearing the defendant say anything. Did you ever see the defendant, Mr. Reeves here, hold his head as if he was hurt or attacked or thrown something at him? Anything at all like that?
Never.
All right. Once you heard the shot, where did you focus your attention?
I was just staring at in front of me. It was so shocking. I've never seen anybody shot before. It was petrifying, and my husband had to grab me and say, "Come on, we have to leave."
Okay. Did you see Mr. Olson start walking towards the aisle?
I did.
Okay. And did he ever make it to the aisle?
No, like I said, he turned after what I realized when he was shot, and he took, I'm going to say 2 steps, 3 steps, and he fell like right in front of, not in front of my seat, but in the row right in front of me on the ground.
Okay. Did you see people trying to help him?
Yes, there was a young man there, and he came over and he opened his shirt or something, and I saw some blood, and that was it.
Okay. Now, at this point in time, did you ever look back at Mr. Reeves, or were you focused on leaving the theater?
Well, when we started to leave the theater, I turned around to look back, and Mr. Reeves was just sitting there, like, he was just very calm.
Did you eventually leave the theater?
Yes.
And where did you go? Meaning leaving theater number 10, did you stay within the movie theater complex?
Yes, we had to go down into the concession area.
Okay, and what was the reason for that?
But they told us that somebody would be by to take our statements.
Okay. And were you handed any forms?
Yes.
When you were handed these forms, were you given any instructions about how to fill it out?
No, they just told us to write down what we saw.
Okay, and just based on being told to write down what you saw, did you write down something?
I did.
Okay, did you write down an incredibly detailed statement?
No. Matter of fact, if you look at my statement, you can see how shaky my handwriting was. It was, you know, I just thought they wanted us to say we saw somebody get shot, and that's all I wrote.
Okay, to you, that was what the information was?
Yes.
All right. Did you think you were going to be interviewed by some type of deputy or a detective later after that?
I was, yes.
Okay. And were you, was that done in the theater?
Yes.
When you were in the theater, did you discuss what you saw with all the other patrons that were in there?
No, no. My husband and I sat by ourselves at a table, and we didn't talk to anybody.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Escobar?
Please report, counsel. Good morning, Ms. Roy.
Good morning.
Ms. Roy, well, let me ask you this question. What year were you born?
1948.
Okay. You talked initially on direct examination about your disability.
Yes.
And you had that disability back on January the 13th of 2014, is that correct?
I did.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about that disability. You cannot see from your left eye at all.
If they unsewed my eye, I would be able to see. There's nothing wrong with the vision, but it's because of a medical problem that they closed the eye.
So from the left side, you can't see?
Right.
Okay. You can see from your right eye.
Yes.
You have glasses.
Yes.
And are you nearsighted or farsighted?
I think I'm both.
You think you're both? Okay.
I have, what do they call that? Progressive lenses.
Okay. And I believe you indicated on direct examination likewise that as a result of this tumor that you suffered, you lost the hearing also on your left side.
Yes.
So is it true then that in order to see someone on your left side that you would have to turn your head?
I do.
Okay. One of the reasons that you have your husband seating to your right at a theater is because of that issue, correct?
Yes.
Your right ear, which is your better ear, would be able to hear your husband.
Right,
Is that correct?
yes,
And your right eye, who is your only eye, would be able to see your husband easily by just, right?
yes,
Okay. Now, you also have some balance problems, is my understanding. Is that correct?
yes, yes,
And you developed those balance problems actually before January the 13th of 2014, correct?
yes. I've had 3 brain tumors. During the 3rd brain tumor, they cut my vestibular schwannoma, and I had a stroke during that surgery.
Okay. And that obviously has affected your...
Yes, the vestibular schwannoma controls your balance.
Yes, ma'am. Now, prior to January the 13th of 2014, you did not have any testing on your right ear, is that correct?
I did not.
Now, you would agree with me that, I believe you indicated on direct examination that when you came into the theater, were the previews playing? Is that what you indicated
Yes.
to Mr. Rosenwasser?
Yes,
Okay. And so, do you know, when you came into the theater, how long the previews had already been playing?
I have no idea.
Okay. But you would agree that when you came into the theater, certainly the interior of the theater was pretty dark.
Well, I don't know if you would say pretty dark. I would call it more muted. You could see the seats. You could see people were seated there.
Page 15, lines 9 through 11. Ms. Roy, you remember me taking your deposition?
I do
Back,
not.
March 23rd, 2015.
It's possible. I spoke with so many people right after that. If you say I did it, I did it.
Okay. And you remember March 23rd, 2015 was closer to January 13, 2014
Yes,
than we are today.
this is true.
And do you remember the question that I posed to you? But the interior of the theater is pretty dark. Is that fair to say? You said yes.
Well, to me, pretty dark could be muted, yes.
You would agree that your statement back in 2015 was more accurate because it was closer to the event.
Well, I still think it was muted.
Now, you would also agree that the previews were loud.
Yes, but not as loud as the movie.
Okay.
I mean, I can talk now and it's loud, or I can talk now and it's loud.
And you would agree that the announcement for patrons in that theater to turn off their phones had already been displayed on the screen.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're trying to tell me.
Okay. You know, in these theaters, they have an announcement,
Yes,
right? It says, turn off your phones, right? Put off your phones, turn off your phones,
okay.
don't text. That announcement had already come on. You remember that announcement, do you not?
Yes,
Okay. And so you had put your phone away.
I don't have a phone.
Okay, do your husband have a phone?
No,
Okay. So you're seated there, and you certainly don't hear any commotion whatsoever from Mr. Reeves, who is seated just 3 seats from you.
no, but I could sense motion.
Okay, but you didn't hear anything, correct?
No,
Okay. And had you already turned over to look at Mr. Reeves by that time?
yes, I was in the movie theater and they were having commercials, which you see a million times, so I was looking around.
Okay, so you're in the movie theater, you're seated, the previews are loud, and it's pretty dark. That's the scene that you were in, correct?
Your Honor, I'd object to the characterization of pretty dark. She clarified and indicated it was muted as well.
That's what you were in, that condition, correct?
The movie was not as, the previews were not as loud as the movie,
Okay.
and I could see things going on in the theater, so it was not completely dark.
You were looking at the previews?
No, I just told you, I was looking around the theater.
So you weren't interested in the previews?
Absolutely not.
Okay, and your husband wasn't either?
I have no idea what he was interested in.
Was he talking to you?
No,
Okay. Now, you indicated that you saw Mr. Reeves lean forward, is that correct?
yes,
But you could not tell what was being discussed by Mr. Reeves.
that's true.
And then, what does he do after that? He leans
Mr.
forward, what does he do next?
He stands up to go out the row.
So are you telling this court that he leans forward? How long is he in that position?
5-6 seconds.
Okay. And then he immediately gets up and leaves, is what you're telling this court?
That's the way I remember it.
Okay. Now, you would agree that the aisle, if you're seated in a seat at the Cobb Theater, the aisle in front of you is limited space, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you would agree that even before Mr. Reeves starts leaving the theater, you had noticed some mumbling going on from patrons that were in the row in front of you. Mumbling.
well, I don't know if it was mumbling, but chattering, yes.
Did you ever tell me in a deposition that it was mumbling?
I really don't remember what I said 8 years ago. I have no idea.
So it could have been mumbling that you
It could have been mumbling, could have been chattering.
Okay. And did you think that because those individuals in front of you were mumbling, that somehow they were mad, those patrons?
No,
Okay. So you see Mr. Reeves start moving in your direction
yes,
to leave the theater.
yes,
And you indicated, I believe, on direct examination, that Mr. Reeves was angry.
yes.
And tell me what it was that gave you the impression at that moment that Mr. Reeves was angry.
He stood up quickly. He had a frown on his face when he was passing in front of me.
Mhm.
He was mumbling. And if you think of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and you see Grumpy, that's what he looked like. That's what it struck me as. So he looked angry to me.
So you're saying that you looked at him and he looked, his facial features were what?
Like a frown.
Like a frown. Okay. And so in addition to the frown, you say you heard mumbling. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Or did you hear what was being mumbled?
I did not.
Now, you would agree that since there's limited space in front of you, if someone gets up and he's walking in that limited space, you're going to say, "Excuse me," right?
I would.
And you certainly wouldn't say, "Excuse me," because the previews are playing and you have patrons all around you. You wouldn't say, "Excuse me." You would, in a very low tone, say, "Excuse me."
I would make direct contact with that person and I would go, "Excuse me."
But what if the individual is just saying, "Excuse me," as he walks by in a low tone?
He was not saying "excuse me."
Well, how do you know? You don't know what the mumbling was.
It does not sound like "excuse me."
Okay. Now, Mr. Reeves's wife was right near him, correct?
Yes,
Okay, basically a seat, right?
yes.
And were you looking at her, or were you looking at Mr. Reeves as he was passing by?
Mr. Reeves.
Okay, and so you don't know if she was mumbling.
That's true.
Now, your position also is that as Mr. Reeves was trying to navigate that narrow area in front of your knees, your position is that he wasn't holding the wall or bracing himself against the wall, right?
There was no wall.
There was no wall behind you.
No?
Okay. And I think we've agreed that he didn't step on your toes,
He bumped my foot.
and you don't believe that that was on purpose?
That was not intentional.
Okay. Now, you agree that Mr. Reeves is gone, right? For
Yes.
several minutes, right?
Yeah, 3 to 5, I guess.
Okay.
Something like that.
And as you see him walking up the stairs, walking up normally,
Yes.
and then he sat down, correct?
Yes.
And not only did he sit down, but you believe that he spoke to his wife.
I don't remember that.
You want to?
I do not remember that.
Or did you ever tell me that in a deposition that he spoke to his wife at that moment?
I keep telling you, I don't remember the deposition, so I don't remember if he spoke to his wife. It was a long time ago.
Okay. Your position is that you didn't hear him say anything.
I did not.
Now, while Mr. Reeves is saying nothing, it is when Mr. Olson stands up, right?
Yes.
And tells Mr. Reeves, "You reported me to management."
I did not hear management. I heard you reported me.
You reported me. And you could tell at that moment that Mr. Olson was not happy.
Well, I suppose not.
In fact, you believe he was angry.
I did not say he was angry. I said you reported me to management.
Did he say that in an angry way?
I don't know Mr. Olson, so I don't know if for him that was angry. It didn't strike me as angry. It was more like he was annoyed, like, you reported me to management?
So are you telling me that because you don't know Mr. Olson, you can't tell us when he's angry, but you can look at Mr. Reeves?
Oh, well,
And if he's
Mr. Olson,
mumbling,
Mr.
you can
Olson
tell
was
us that
not
Mr. Reeves is
frowning.
angry.
Mr. Olson was not frowning and mumbling. He was clear spoken, and he said, you reported me.
Okay. Now, certainly that conversation by Mr. Olson was louder than what you would have expected in a movie theater.
Yes, probably.
And you just indicated that Mr. Olson's facial features did not indicate to you that he was mad, right? He wasn't frowning or
No,
any of that.
That's true. I did not take him to be angry.
Well, I thought your position was that you couldn't see the facial features of Mr. Olson because it was too dark.
I told you I could see people.
Is your position that it was too dark and therefore you couldn't see Mr. Olson's facial features?
I never said that.
Page 35, lines 1.
May we briefly approach?
Yes.
Ms. Roy, I'm going to direct you back to that deposition that we took on March the 23rd of 2015. Remember that?
I do not.
Okay. Do you remember making...
Your Honor, I would object. She indicated she does not remember.
Okay. Ms. Roy, I'm going to show you a document. I'd like you to read it.
Okay.
Okay? May I put you on? I'll stay. You can stay. I'll bring it to you. Starts here on question. Read this right down here.
Okay.
See right here?
Okay.
Did you read this already?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Do you remember that?
I don't.
You don't remember it at all?
I do not.
Okay. But you would agree that if you made a statement in a
Your
deposition
Honor, I
back...
would object. This is improper.
I'm going to overrule.
You would agree that if you made a statement in a deposition back in 2015 under oath, that your recollection of the events would have been much better in 2015 than they are in 2022?
If that's what I remembered then, that's what I remembered then. I don't remember it today.
Oh, I realize that. But you would agree that since 2015 is back near the time of the event, your recollection back in 2015 would be a lot better than your recollection in 2022.
Yes.
Now, I think we left off where you indicated to the members of the jury that you did not see Mr. Reeves holding on or bracing himself on the wall when he left,
There was no wall.
right? And then when he came back, you indicated that he came back normally, correct?
Yes.
And he sat down where his wife was, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's when Mr. Olson stands up and tells him, "You've turned me in," or something to that effect.
Yes. You
Okay.
reported me.
Now, you didn't hear Mr. Reeves respond to that, did you?
I did not.
And you looked over to Mr. Reeves, did you not?
Yes, I was looking in that area.
Because you thought,
I thought that there was going to be an altercation.
and at that point in time, that you thought that somebody was going to punch somebody, right?
Yes.
Okay, and the only thing you had in front of you at this point in time is that you had Mr. Olson standing up, right?
Yes.
Accusing Mr. Reeves of turning him in, correct?
Well, I don't know if he was accusing him, but he mentioned that, yes.
And you didn't hear anything from Mr. Reeves at all?
I did not.
But you thought that a punch was going to be thrown?
Yes.
In fact, you don't even remember, do you, Mr. Reeves having popcorn in his hand, do you?
Yes, I thought Chad Olson had the popcorn.
Exactly. You didn't think Mr. Reeves had anything in his hand?
That's right.
Now, clearly to you, that tone that Mr. Olson said, "You turned me in," was a pretty loud tone,
Loud enough for me to hear it.
and certainly loud enough that you wouldn't expect anybody to have that tone in a theater with the movie previews blaring. Right? Because it had to be over the preview, right?
Well, yes, but I don't think that you have to speak that loud to speak over the previews.
Do you know
And my
what-
husband was sitting right next to me, and he would talk to me, and I heard him.
Do you know what previews were playing?
I have no idea.
Do you remember RoboCop?
I do not.
You remember all these action shoot 'em up?
I do not. I
Previews?
don't pay attention to the previews.
Okay, and so you're telling this court that you also did not see Mr. Olson going over the back of his seat towards Mr. Reeves?
He did not.
You didn't see him going over the back of his seat once?
Never.
You didn't go see him going over the back of the seat twice?
If I didn't see him do it once, I certainly didn't
And
see
you
him do it
certainly did-
twice.
and you
Your
s-
Honor, I'd ask that Mr. Escobar.
My apologies for that, Judge, I did jump the gun a little bit. And you didn't see him going over the back of the seat a third time?
I did not.
And you were a mere couple of seats from Mr. Reeves, correct?
That's true.
And you were facing Mr. Olson
Yes.
in that darkened theater.
Yes.
Now, you scooted out of there pretty quickly because your husband was telling you, let's leave, correct?
I think I was there longer than my husband would have wanted me to be there, but I felt frozen. I was shocked.
I understand. And you went to the concession area?
Yes.
Concession lobby area. And in that concession lobby area, there's a bunch of tables and seats.
Yes.
Is that correct? And there was a large group of individuals that were there with you in that concession area, correct?
Yes.
And everybody was talking about what had just happened.
I have no idea.
You didn't hear people chattering about what
I
happened?
heard people talking. I have no idea what they were talking about.
Page 45, lines 13 through 20. Remember the deposition that I took of you in
I do not.
2015?
I do not.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. I'm going to ask you if you remember these questions and answers, okay?
Okay.
Your Honor, I would
Question.
object. I would ask that the statement be shown to the witness who's already indicated that she does not.
I'll be more than glad to do that, Your Honor.
Okay, yeah.
May I approach? This row is going to start right here. And it's going to go down to here.
Oh my goodness, I don't remember this. Okay.
Okay. So you had a chance to take a look at this transcript, correct?
Yes.
And does that refresh your recollection about the fact that individuals out there in that concession area were talking about what happened?
Apparently so. I do not remember that at all.
Okay. But you would agree with me that if you made that statement in 2015, that your recollection would have been much better in 2015 than it was in 2022.
Yes.
Ms. Roy, do you remember how long you were in that concession stand with all those people talking?
Half an hour, 45 minutes, I don't know.
And you certainly never remember any police officer coming to you and telling you, do not talk to anyone in this group about what you heard or saw. You never-
True.
No police officer came to you, 40, 45 people, whatever the number was, in a concession area, and not one single police officer came to you and said, we're going to separate you, I don't want you to talk to anybody, I don't want you to hear what anybody has to say. That never happened.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I don't remember hearing that there was ever a number of people that was in the concession area. That was just.
Whatever number, Judge, whatever number.
Well, I mean, there's a big difference between 10 and 45.
Miss Roy, how many people do you think were out in the concession area?
I have no idea. I have no idea how many people were in the theater.
Okay. But regardless of you sitting in that concession area, no police officer came to you and said, hey, we're going to separate you, or hey, I don't want you to talk to anybody about what you heard or saw, right? That never
True.
happened. It never happened at all, ever, while you were in that theater, correct?
Correct.
I believe that you indicated on direct examination that you were interviewed by a police officer.
Yes.
And you would agree that that interview was a very, very short interview, correct?
I've never been interviewed by a police officer. I can't tell you if it was long or short.
Hearing 2420. We had a hearing before this very judge back in 2017. You remember the following questions and answers. You had a police officer that interviewed you. You said yes. It's a short interview. You said, I believe so, yes.
Well, that's what I just said. I've never been interviewed by a policeman, so I didn't know if it was long or short.
Well, but you said under oath in 2017 that you believed it was short, correct?
Because I didn't know the difference between a long interview and a short interview.
Let me ask you, in that interview, did this detective ever ask you about any of your disabilities?
No.
Okay. No further questions.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. I know it's been a while, but do you remember if this theater had a Cine Bistro in it, a place where you can eat?
Yes.
And where's that located in reference to where you were sitting? Do you recall?
Oh, the Cine Bistro, that would have been behind us.
Okay, is there a wall or something that separates the
No.
general theater? Let me show you State's Exhibit. Six. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Looking at State's Exhibit number 6, do you recognize this
Yes,
photograph?
I do.
And what is that a photograph of?
It's the theater. Like, we would have been, wherever the middle is, we would have been right here. And then the Curtis Reeves and his wife would have been here. But there's no wall there.
Okay, this area right here, what is that brown part by it?
That's just, oh, I don't know. Do you call it a wall? I call a wall something that goes straight up. That's just a partition separating the Cine Bistro from this area.
Can I have the witness sit down just for a moment?
Yes.
Oh, sick.
You might go on that side. Can everybody see if I hold this up here? Okay, you indicated you were in which row?
We would have been in this back row, maybe like sitting here, and then there would have been an empty space, and then it would have been Mrs. Reeves and her husband.
Okay, just somewhere in the middle is what you're saying?
Right. And
Okay.
that's the Cine Bistro back there.
Rosenwald, sir?
I can't
Yeah, those jurors can't see.
see. I know, you have to stay
You'll
right
have
there.
to, she'll have to sit on this,
Yeah.
closer to the side.
Okay. You know what we'll do? Maybe we'll do it twice.
Do it again?
Well, now those can't see.
Right, well, I'll do it one time on this side and one time on this side.
Okay, thank you.
Want to move down more?
Just a teeny bit. Okay.
Okay.
So when you were asked the question about whether or not Mr. Reeves had a lien on a wall, what did you take that to mean?
Well, like I know this is a curtain, but that to me would be a wall because it goes straight up.
Okay.
This is just, to me, a divider. So like my husband and I would have been sitting here, there would have been an empty seat, then it would have been Mr. and Mrs. Reeves, and then,
Okay, so but the area behind you, you're terming it as a divider.
yes,
Okay, all right,
yeah, it doesn't look like a wall to me.
okay.
Did you want
No, well, did you all need to see?
I think they're good.
Okay, so both myself and Mr. Escobar are asking you about difficulties on the left side. Because of those difficulties, do you do anything in particular when something is happening on your left side?
Yes, if I want to look at something, I look directly at it.
Okay, so that's how you compensate, is you turn and you look directly at it.
Yes,
You were asked by Mr. Escobar about having your right ear checked. Did you have any difficulty hearing your husband out of your right ear?
no,
Hearing anything out of your right ear?
no,
You were asked about chattering versus mumbling. You remember those questions?
Yes.
Okay. The theater as a whole, how would you characterize that? Chattering or mumbling?
well, you can hear people that are chattering, you
Okay,
know.
because they're talking to each other.
Yes, throughout
Okay.
the theater.
Mr. Reeves was mumbling
Yes,
because he was talking to himself.
I thought so.
Do you remember when you were asked about the lighting conditions in the theater, if it was pretty dark or muted? Do you remember that exchange with Mr.
Yes.
Escobar? Okay. May I approach the witness?
You may.
For defense counsel, hearing 2395. Can you read this exchange? It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. In this statement that was referred to by defense counsel, did you in fact answer that it was muted?
Yes,
Okay. So it wasn't as if you were, for the first time today, saying muted. Back then, you said it was muted as well.
yes, yes,
Okay, and you clearly can read that here.
yes.
You remember being asked questions about whether or not you could hear what people were talking about when everyone was in the general area of the theater after the shooting.
Yes.
All right, for counsel, this is hearing 2419. May I approach the witness? At a prior time, did you also indicate that you didn't hear what they were talking about?
Right.
And your quote was, "I didn't hear what they said."
Right.
And that's consistent with your testimony today.
Yes.
Let's just say, for the sake of argument, you did hear other people talking about it. Did you take other people's statements and make it your own?
No.
You're testifying to what you observed and what you heard.
Yes.
Now, just going back very briefly, when this defendant came back into the theater, he sat down, some time passed, and then you indicated that Mr. Olson had stood up.
Yeah.
Okay, was
Well-
everything very quick between that time and the time of the shooting?
No.
Maybe, well, did it take about 5 seconds till then for the shooting to
Look
take
at that,
place?
Jack. I've been very lenient with leading, but he's leading this witness throughout.
Okay, I'll reword. Between the time that you saw popcorn in the air and the shooting, how much time was that? Between the popcorn and the shooting?
I'm going to say
Almost,
5 or 6 seconds.
okay, we'll go back to the time of the popcorn.
The popcorn went flying. The popcorn didn't have time to come down, and his arm came up. I saw an arm come up.
Okay, so that's what I want to focus on. Between the time of the popcorn and the shooting, was that a very quick period of time?
Yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? Nothing further, thank you.
Just very briefly, one question. Ms. Roy, I think you indicated in redirect that divider, you're calling it a divider. It's behind your seat, correct? Okay. And so are you telling the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that you never saw Mr. Reeves as he was exiting in front of you and out the theater, that he wasn't holding on or bracing himself on the divider?
I don't believe that wall was high enough for anybody to brace themselves on.
So you didn't see it? You didn't see him doing that?
He didn't do it.
He didn't do it, okay. No further questions.
May this witness be released?
She may be released, but we're going to keep her on standby.